Jim Simpson here. Today I'm going to try to record the most important video of my life. I'm going to prove to you that the mainstream media in particular, but to a lesser extent the new media, YouTube and such, are killing children. They are, in fact, causing most of the mass public killings in America. School shootings, people running over crowds with trucks, all of that. It's being caused mostly by the mainstream media and to a lesser degree, new media. Let me show you my evidence. In the comments below this video, you'll find all the documents supporting everything I'm saying. So the first thing you need to know is about events in Austria, 1980s, city of Vienna. There was a whole series of suicides of young people, typically between 25 and, on the high end, 15 on the low end. They were killing themselves by jumping in front of the local light rail system, subway, whatever you want to call it, the commuter train system. They were killing themselves by jumping in front, and there would be huge media outcry. Each time it happened, it would get published. Commentators on both local TV and the local newspapers would drone on and on about, why is this happening to us? And after several years of this, the leadership of the city sat down with the media and said, okay, guys, we're going to try something here. Just shut up. I mean the media. And they convinced them to shut up about these events. Flat, just stop talking about them. Within 5 years of that shut up message, those suicides dropped by 75%. They were down to about 25% of what they used to be. Now, why was all this happening? Those train suicides, rail suicides, whatever you want to call them, are a type of suicide that affects other people. Obviously, it gives train conductors PTSD, and it makes thousands of commuters late. And that drew media and public attention and outcry to the situation. Now, I'm going to give you links below to at least 2 of them to psychological studies on something they call suicidal contagion, where the media is the avenue of the contagion. Okay, media reports, jumping from one to the other. Okay, what other form of suicide can you think of that causes lots of media attention and affects many other people other than the person who dies in the process deliberately? Yeah, mass public killings. Doesn't matter whether it's a bombing, vehicle ramming, which are very common in China and are on the upswing here in the U.S. But in the U.S., it's mostly shootings. Let's get real. Okay? If you and I, who are fairly normal people, or at least at the worst, weighed in the shallow end of the DSM-5, okay, where it's not so scary, like myself, okay, mid-level Asperger's case. Yes, I know they changed the name. That's a story for another time. Fine. If those of us who are close to normal, at least, we see a story about one of these mass public killings. The main point of the article we want to know is not whether the shooter or bomber or whatever he is died or not. It's not really important. What's important is he's still on the loose and running around. And if he's still on the loose and running around near me, maybe I better get Grandpa's old service pistol down out of the top shelf of the closet, load it up, and strap up. If that kind of nut is running around, right? That's the normal reaction to these incidents. You care about whether they're still active. But turn it around from the point of view of somebody in the scary end of the DSM, the psychopaths, the sociopaths, the malignant narcissist, and God only knows what else is out there, right? Freaks of every description, I guess. Ask your local shrink about that. Look at it from their point of view. What is the most important part of these scenes? Yes, the one where they die. That's what they care about. They don't care about who they kill. Lord. I know it's disgusting to even think about. I get it. But once you view it from that lens, you start to see that these mass killing events are, from the point of view of somebody who wants to stop these things, like hopefully you and I, these are primarily suicides. A vile, nasty, horrible form of suicide. Oh boy. Another pointer in that direction, the vast majority of these killers are white. Okay? More than you would expect with the American population ratios by skin color. Well, what else do we know about suicides? Per capita, white America commits most of the suicides. Even beyond, okay, yeah, we're kind of a majority in the country, but black America, for example, commits suicides at half the rate you would expect with their population, half the rate of the white population. And most of these shooters are white. Yeah, it's because they're suicides. And not in terms of their overall effect. I get that. Trust me, I get that. But they're suicides. Okay. There's been a lot of studies of suicidal contagion that stemmed from the events in Austria because it was a well-studied set of events. Let's switch now. The next set of links below are from the United States Department of Transportation because they care about rail suicide too. And they have a whole set of websites on, how we can try and reduce these accidents. Not accidents. We can reduce these incidents by responsible media reporting is how they put it. The second link in the DOT literature below is going to be a set of media guidelines that they've published on if you're a reporter or an editor of a major news outlet, here's how you report on these kinds of incidents responsibly and don't boost the contagion effect. Whole set of guidelines. You're going to see them. The bottom of that PDF document in red is a set of bullet points on what you should not do. If you're paying any attention here, go read those. Because then the next link below is to the New York Times reporting on the recent Minnesota killer who shot up a church school, killed 2 children, wounded 17 others. You're going to see the New York Times reporting. Compare it with the DOT guidelines, and you'll see that they might as well have used the guidelines of what not to do by the Department of Transportation. They turned it into a checklist. They did every single thing that the DOT says don't do if you want to try to limit the repetition of these events. Oh, crap. Okay. Next document after that is from a 2017 World Health Organization study. It was actually put out by a couple of NGOs who deal with suicide issues. But this is a document supported by the World Health Organization on how to avoid suicidal contagion. And on page 10 of that PDF, you'll see that they strongly suspect, they don't have proof at that point in 2017, but they strongly suspect that mass public killings and terrorism events, they also list that as possibly being affected by that. Now, this is not good. Okay? These DOT guidelines have been published to all the mainstream media. They've been screaming about this for years. And it's obvious. It's bloody obvious to anybody who pays any attention here that those same guidelines should be applied to mass public killings by any weapons system. It doesn't matter. Ford F-150, pistols, shotgun, who cares? That's not important. The media is the majority of the problem. If the Vienna numbers are accurate, they're responsible for 75% of these killings. Okay? And I think it's a lot more than that. A lot more. Once you start diving into the psychological literature on suicidal contagion, you see patterns. The people that are most likely to get the contagion effect and be the copycat are people in the ages of 15 to 25 range. Are peak years for this stuff. So boy, that's exactly where a lot of our killers are. A lot. Other clues are just scattered throughout this. The copycat will often see some point of demographic or political similarity between themselves and the previous suicide victim. It's hard to call these guys victims. I get that, okay? We're turning it around and looking at this from the point of view of suicide. Starting in early 2023, we had a trans shooter at a Nashville school. Killed some people, killed kids. A month after that, we had a copycat attempt in Colorado. I'm going to provide links to these down below. We're also seeing some possible crossover into another area of public killings, and that's the targeted assassins. Okay? We're seeing a crossover of technique and media stirring between people like the Minnesota shooter, killed 2, wounded 17. Okay? He wrote political and trans-centric messages all over his gun and magazines. He had the names of previous shooters. He had political messages scrawled all over. The guy that just killed Charlie Kirk, just a few days ago as I speak this, he had political messages regarding trans ideology and some other stuff on the bullets in the gun. Okay? Did he copycat that off of the Minnesota shooter? It sure looks like it. It's all very similar. Okay? That means we've got a transmission of political energy and ideological energy and similar messages of hate being transmitted from one of these guys to the next, to the next, to the next. Well, what's the method of transmission? What's the wiring between them? Media. It's absolutely media. It can't be anything else. Most of the mass public killers die at the scene, either by their own hand, or they're shot by a cop, or regular folks who've had enough. To such a degree that we can absolutely determine these events to be suicide. Now, how the targeted killers fit into that paradigm, I'm not quite sure. Okay? Because some sources say they're a different kind of critter. Okay? May not be as psychopathic, maybe more ideological driven, or whatever. And some of them get away, and we still don't know who shot Dr. King, for example. So maybe they're not quite the same critter. Maybe they are, I don't know. But as far as the mass shooters and vehicular homicide types, and by the way, where'd they get that idea? Well, China has got a flood of vehicular homicide of densely crowded pedestrian cases. One idiot with a SUV killed 34 people not long ago. So we're seeing an international suicidal contagion effect. Holy crap. Okay? We're seeing school shootings in places like Serbia, mass public shootings in Norway, and places like that. Yeah, the contagion's jumping international borders. This isn't even a U.S. problem. It's a worldwide problem. And we know how to stop it. You get the media to shut up or at least follow some responsible guidelines. Now, if a law gets passed requiring that, gets signed by both houses of Congress, here's how a bill works. We know that because hopefully gets signed by the president. Would the courts back it? I don't know. I'll be honest. In order to limit a First Amendment right, and that's what we're talking about, be fully up front here, that law limiting First Amendment rights would have to pass strict scrutiny analysis by the courts. That means it has to promote a severely obvious governmental necessity. And saving kids' lives would qualify. Yeah, it'll get past that part. Then it has to be narrowly tailored to meet the government's interest, and there can be no possible lesser infringement of the First Amendment right. Okay? Would such a law withstand court scrutiny and pass a strict scrutiny analysis? I don't know. I call it 50-50 odds, personally. Okay? Rough guess. But I'll tell you what it would do. It would put the media on notice that we know. We know what they're doing. They're not just dancing in the blood of children with their reporting. They got control of the faucet. Okay? That's a problem. And just letting them know that we know is absolutely worth doing. Passing the bill, court fight, all that, yeah, it's worth it. And we need to try. Signing out. But I am, having come across this, I gotta tell you, I'm disgusted. I'm enraged. 75% drop just by getting the media to shut the hell up. It's worth trying. Jim out.